Hello and good evening to you. Um, this is going to be video 736, and I don't exactly know what it's going to be about. I don't know what it's going to be called. I've never on my channel pre-made the video or really taken notes and planned things out. Maybe once when I was doing the roadmap because I needed a prop. But this video is kind of going to be in response to a lot of the attacks that have been happening lately on trans youth, and somewhat how an attack on a trans youth can be an attack on all trans folks. And I guess this being my channel, how I've been reacting to it, which I think I've been doing a pretty good job, but I want to share just some of the pain, what I'm going through, because you might be going through it or you may know someone who's going through it. So I think it's somewhat going to be therapeutic for me and cathartic. I hope it might help you out. And may, if not, maybe give you a glance into kind of what happens behind the scenes, or what's going on in the mind up here. But real briefly, uh, about 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, President Biden got inaugurated, and he kind of said, as part of my first 100 days, I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this. And one of the things he said is that his administration, an executive order, not to tolerate discrimination by sexual preference or by gender. And that was a huge 180 from kind of what President Trump, when he was in office, he dismantled a lot of what President Obama and Vice President Biden had kind of set up, all the really positive things. If you see me like grunting in pain, it's because of Project Haggis, which you can watch the other videos for that. But as I'm sitting here, I'm like in pain. So I'm going to wince when I move. Um, but anyway, so uh, in response to that, there has been just a number, so far, 20 states, and I don't think that includes Georgia and Mississippi, so it might be 22 now. 22 state legislatures in the last 6 weeks have introduced some sort of anti-trans legislation, with the intent of saying they're protecting the children, they're protecting girls, because they don't want trans girls to participate in sports, and a very thinly veiled anti-trans law. Basically, we're just a slight bit away from the bathroom argument. Trans girls should not be in the girls' locker room because they're boys. And people have gone so far as they started to use this term biological boys, biological males. A trans girl is a biological boy or biological male, and that the girls athletically can't compete with a biological male. And it's gotten really, today in Mississippi, there's a woman who kind of cornered the governor and said, you know, because the governor was like, we're we got to protect girls' athletics, and we have to prevent the overtaking of girls' sports by biological males. And the woman said, well, look, I have a trans daughter. She's 12 years old. She plays sports. And because of this law, what am I going to tell my daughter? You know, and he back to her, he said, well, maybe she should try out for the boys' team, you know, which is just totally inappropriate. And the mom said, well, my daughter doesn't want to play on the boys' team. She's a girl, you know. So there's a little bit of there's a disconnect here. There's a disconnect. And again, it's I think the Human Rights Campaign, and this might be a little dated, said there's currently 45 pieces of legislation, state legislation right now. The 20 are new, what I talked about, or 22 now, I guess, since President Biden came out and said we should all treat each other with respect and dignity. Um, but the examples that are being given is like this girl, and there was a picture of in another state, it might have been Georgia, and they didn't want to reveal who the girl was, so they took a picture of her from the back. She's on her school swimming team. And it's the picture of the girl sitting with her back to the camera. Very teeny tiny girl, okay, trans girl in a one-piece bathing suit and a swim cap and a pair of goggles in her hands, and she's kind of slumped over, waiting for her turn to swim in the pool. And it kind of was like the images that the anti-trans groups are using are these like Space Jam aliens type. If you watch the Popeye cartoons, Alice the Goon, this really big strapping girl, and the other teammates, and they're saying, "Aha! See, a biological male, a trans girl, is it's not fair." And in this case, what reality is you have very young children who have not gone through puberty yet. And so you have adolescents who've not gone through puberty yet. And so from a biological point of view, the trans girls, okay, whether they be on blockers, I'm assuming, or not yet on blockers, their body has not changed yet. They are prepubescent. And so if you can remember back to being a prepubescent male, sexual, okay, we're talking, XY chromosome, okay, we're not talking gender, up until middle school or even high school. I mean, for some it was high school, but middle school, very, the voice hadn't broke, it hadn't cracked yet, didn't get your hair on your arm. I mean, again, the secondary characteristics, your body had not changed yet. And that is the condition of all of these, well, some of these trans girls who have not gone through puberty yet, but they're being demonized for a political point. And in the case of the mom and explaining to her daughter, or looking out for her daughter, this is what she said, something to the effect of, this has nothing to do with equality in sports. This is totally a transphobic reaction. And you can tell by the governor's response, totally ignorant of the process, totally, I mean, just not a very good human being, in my opinion, to insult someone. It's like telling someone their daughter is ugly, you know, or some other, your daughter, if your daughter has such a big nose, something that as human beings we have no control over, totally inappropriate. But for some reason, this governor felt like he was scoring points with his base, okay, what I would kind of call the Trumpism base. But it's really, let's not go to Trump. Let's just say, um, transphobic, fear of the other, fear of something different. And, that's just one example. And, you know, I want to talk a little bit about, obviously it's a bad situation. We need the Equality Act, and this is something else that's on the horizon. The House of Representatives passed an Equality Act that basically amended the 1964 Civil Rights Act to include LGBTQ folks, which includes transgender folks, making it basically, against the law to discriminate based on gender. Passed the House, likely will be killed in the Senate. Something similar went through 2 or 3 years ago, passed through the House, got to the Senate killed it. Republicans in the Senate, conservatives. So my hope is that this time around, there's enough open-minded people that it will pass. It will be made law, and then you're probably going to have a number of, I would assume, lawsuits between the state and the federal government. The state's going to say, you can't tell us what to do, and the federal government says, oh yeah, we can. You know, whatever, whatever, back and forth. Supreme Court, who knows? It is unfortunate. Uh, and this is where I'm driving. I'm going to drive to the snapshot of time. If you had a Polaroid camera and you took a picture, and it was the current reality, unfortunately, at this point in time in the United States, um, making fun of transgender people is cool, or it's not directly admonished. I think it's on the tilting point of it. So I have to look. Let's go back in my life some 20 years ago. It was definitely tilted. It was something that, did you hear about so and so? Oh my gosh, I don't know how I feel about that. It was not accepted. And if you go before that, it was unacceptable, something to be feared. And, things that have been marginalized, whether they be homosexuality and AIDS, you know, it just something that, it's always been there. It's always been in reality, homosexuality, transgender, people who like to eat ice cream upside down. It's all in there. And just over the passage of time, eventually, um, things change. And we've heard a lot lately about cancel culture. And, it really, and I don't want to go too far into that, but the idea is just in this moment, there's enough people who are for something than against it. And if you want to make money in your company, then you're going to cater to the majority for your own business interests. And so as society progresses, the older generations are literally dying off just through attrition, and those outdated ideas die off with them. And I made the mention about my grandparents who passed away, some 30 years ago, and they were raised with some very racist vernacular and expressions, and their mentality and everything, and just that was the way they were raised. That was the society at that time, and they passed away. And those ideas, unfortunately, didn't pass away with them. But the people that believed in it, what I kind of call the islands of hate, they just get smaller and smaller and smaller, and ultimately it's going to be so crazy. So again, back to the idea of that Polaroid. If we take that picture right now and we look at it, the environment is open to the idea of saying, oh no, it's a biological male, or the trans people don't have rights, or they're an abomination, blah, blah, blah. And maybe in 10 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 25 years, it'll be a completely different situation. And the governor of Wisconsin, when pressed about, again, because the news people are interviewing, well, what do you think about, the state of Mississippi is saying trans, doing anti-trans. And the governor of Wisconsin says, trans children, I think he said trans children, but trans youth, he said, I see you and you are loved and worthy of respect, and you will have that in the state of Wisconsin. Something to them, paraphrasing a little bit, but very similar to the Obama administration. I think it was the Secretary of Labor, but she said, transgender people, we see you, we know you're there, we acknowledge you. Excuse me, I got it back. So Project Haggis. So again, we just have to let that. We got to let that crock pot cook, and the norms are going to change. But that's not what this video is about. Um, when I see, let me talk about me, because then I won't make an assumption about you. Um, when I hear about the story, like I think about the little girl on the edge of the swimming pool. She just wants to swim with her friends. Okay. And here someone else is making this judgment call and crushing her spirit. And that is a tragedy. Okay. It should be a crime. And that's why we need this Equality Act to go through. Um, but I can identify with that little girl. And here's where we're going to get into some deep my own problems here. But I can identify with that little girl, and I can put myself in her place very easily. When I was in elementary school, and I've shared this story before, um, I was a good boy one day in school, in elementary school, kindergarten, and my teacher said, Robert, you get, because you were in your seat, you get to choose a prize from the treasure trunk, or the treasure chest. And it was this cardboard chest, and it was full of all this cool stuff. There was like spider rings and pencil erasers and everything. And as I was looking there in this treasure chest, there was a candy lipstick, and I wanted it because I wanted to wear lipstick. I wanted to be a girl so bad. And to be told, no, that's for girls, I can kind of identify somewhat with this pain. Um, and my heart goes out because the odds, what are the odds of being a trans youth and having a mother and a father, parents, or, I'm sorry for the binary assumption, you'll excuse me, having parents who love you so much that they're willing to humor you and let you be treated the way you want to be treated. And in this case, a trans girl. And, doing the therapy and going to counseling. And again, they love their child. They wanted the child to be their authentic self. How magical is that? How rare is that? Again, in my situation, um, if I had gone home that day and I was upset, I used to punch things when I was younger. That's why I have arthritis in my hands now. Because I would get so mad and I would just punch the wall, because there was nothing I could do about it. I had already prayed to God, God, please turn me into a girl. Please, 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 I'll be so good, you know. And so I felt trapped. But I could punch things. I'd punch the wall. I wasn't very strong. I'd hurt my hand. But anyway, um, if I had gone home and said to my mom, Mom, I'm a girl. I'm a girl. I'm not a boy. You know, um, I probably would have been locked away. um, I mean, I would have gone probably to a therapist or something, and Lord knows, back in the 70s, what the thing was. You know, I could have been like in Kentucky, where they electrocute you, they give you shock therapy to re-educate you. Um, who knows what would have happened. But in the case of these kids today, their parents love them and they embrace them and they see this as something truly magical. And, you know, to have that crushed by someone else, it's a shame. And I feel for the pain, but I'm I suffer too, and you might be suffering as well. Uh, because it can be one reason among many. It is a rejection of transgender. It's a rejection. That's what this is. You don't belong here. There is no place for you. You know, here this trans girl had other friends that were girls. She was accepted. She was a good, she was on the team. She's not a super swimmer. She's not the fastest swimmer, but she wants to swim with her friends. And that pain and suffering is something that I can internalize. And I've thought about lately, um, I'm sorry, I'm in a lot of pain. Um, you know, uh, just how, you know, maybe, I see an 18 or a 19, I see a 20-year-old, a friend, Jamie Cannon, um, someone in their 20s who transitions and just how much better results they're going to get. When I initially transitioned, I was 18, and if I had kept it up, oh, imagine, what would have happened. And so I barely can comprehend being in second grade and being honest and having parents that love you. Like I said, my parents, I would have seen a shrink or something, and unfortunately, my parents were not with it. you know, they were not these parents who would go to the ends of the earth for their children. Um, but it makes me kind of wonder, well, what if and what would have happened? And you know, obviously the bigotry and the transphobia that we see today would have been magnified. Some 30. Well, what are we up to? 70, 80, 90, 30 or 40. Oh God. Sorry, pain. Um, mm, man, maybe if I put my hand over it. Um, some 40 years ago, um, it wouldn't be as acceptable today as these kids are. And so again, I just feel like, you know, you, the race is over for you, but you see someone else who can make it. They can do it. They're on their way, and I'm so happy for them. And to see them get crushed like that, it weighs on my heart. It makes me very, very sad. And that is something that has really just done a number on me mentally, the last couple weeks. And every day it just seems like there's another, once it gets in the news and probably there's some kind of algorithm. I use Yahoo News. And so probably because I click on it, then it says, oh, that's something she's interested in. I'll give her another one the next time she logs in. You know, so I guess if trans is in it, I'm going to see it. And so, and obviously too, um, when we're interested in things, something I think Carl Jung called synchronicity is when our mind is actively doing something, it seems like we attract, you know, circumstances to us. Maybe we're just more aware of it. I don't know, but um, like I said, for me personally, it's been a painful couple days, if not a couple weeks, because I feel for these kids. Um, they have an opportunity that I was not afforded, and I want to see them make it. I want to help. I want to give them that boost. I want to hear, leg up. And what can I do? And today at work, I was in a meeting, and it was kind of a general gripe meeting. We talked about the coronavirus and what's in the news, and I just wanted to say, my heart is really troubled by the trans youth, and I didn't say anything because I was afraid of what the other people were going to say. And I made mention about that too, about outing oneself, and I have no illusion. I don't care, um, you know, but I just, I don't know, I guess maybe I do. Under Trump, I was preparing myself to get a star in the mail or something, and a trans flag or something, and by law I have to wear it, wear an armband or something that says I'm trans because they were so anti-trans and everything, and you know Biden came along and it was a breath of fresh air, like this is reality, and now there's a reaction to it, and that's where we're at now. And so my hope is the pendulum will kind of go back into the middle. The reality is, I think, you know, the reality is, you know, there's a population that's growing that just doesn't give a shit about your gender. You know, I'm not going to say Gen X because I don't really know what that is, but, you know, my daughter, I'll use her as an example. She doesn't care. She wants to know what's for dinner. She doesn't care. Um, when she goes off to school or when she gets a job, that's not going to matter. It's going to be non-binary. So the world is definitely changing. Unfortunately, at this moment in time, that Polaroid, it has not changed enough. And that is the rub, as Shakespeare would say. That is the rub. It's not changed enough yet. And we can see that it needs to change more. So if there's a positive takeaway, it's, the acid test has been done and it says we need more change, we need more education, you know. So I'm gonna have to stop. I'm in too much pain. It really hurts. But what's going on here is mental pain, like I said, mental anguish. Um, and that, uh, that's something, like I said, it's, oh, makes me just cry, makes me want to cry, and I'm not on estrogen, so I can't cry. You know, um, Estrogen affected me. It 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 brought down a lot of my self-defense structures that I used for 30 years. And now that I'm not on the estrogen, those structures have kind of rebuilt themselves, because it doesn't have the estrogen to say, no, no, it's okay, you can cry, you can show your emotions, it's okay. So I'm kind of back to my, my fortress of, you know, arrogance. No, my fortress of, I don't know, solitude. Not really. Just my defenses are up, and so I can't really cry. But man, like I said, can you imagine having two or more supportive parents who would just encourage you? You know, This is a story I posted today. It was a girl in Russia, actually, and her parents totally cool with it, defending her. And the father, when he was asked, he's like, she's my child, I love her, you know and we just don't have that here yet. you know we have people who unfortunately say, this is my child and I love her, so I'm going to protect her from you. you know And like I said, again, we just maybe need more time to pass. And those islands of hate just need to diminish. People that cling on to outdated ideas. And, unfortunately, it's going to hurt some feelings. It's going to damage some kids. And maybe this is something I thought about too in my life is, um, the timeline of my life has just periods of time that were punctuated by transgender stuff where it ruined my life because I couldn't accept it, you know. Um, I wasn't ready to transition yet, so I put it on the back burner and I lived a lie for a little bit and I lived a lie for a little bit and I wasn't my authentic self, this stretches of this, you know, and for these kids, and ideally, if this society thing worked, they wouldn't have that. It'd be a Jazz Jennings story. um, you know what I mean? And we're not there yet. We're not there yet. It is a tragedy. It is a shame. And I thought about this too. I don't remember the situation. I think it was South Carolina or North Carolina. But they had, I believe it was equality in marriage. And the state legislature, the governor of the state, the state legislature had banned same-sex marriage. And apparently they were going to be the home of the NCAA tournament. And Nike, or a sports clothing thing, I think it was Nike, came out and basically put pressure on the NCAA and said, um, we strongly suggest the NCAA ruling committee move the NCAA tournament because the state of South Carolina, we'll say South Carolina, the state of South Carolina does not reflect, um, diversity and inclusion based off the state legislature, and they did. The state lost millions of dollars in revenue, and I almost feel like that is what needs to happen in these states like Georgia or Mississippi. Some company needs to step up and say, because you are against inclusion and diversity, transgender, LGBTQ, you're not with the Equality Act. We're not going to build our manufacturing plant here. We're going to go to Wisconsin. And I almost wonder if that is going to be what the pressure that needs. Again, these islands of hate, for the moment, they've got enough of a not a majority, but they have enough people to have leverage. But in these other states, more hip, more with it states, um, that's kind of what. And I wonder if maybe that might be a sign of, hey, and again, go back to the idea of cancel culture. It's not really cancel culture. It's just people holding on to outdated ideas and being xenophobic, transphobic is just not the future, you know. All right, so that's my video, and I'm not sure again if I made any points or anything, but I just kind of wanted to talk about how an attack on a trans youth in this state causes destruction and negativity and anxiety across everywhere for, I'm not going to say every trans person, but for me anyway. Um, and it brings up a lot of suffering and everything. And, again, I don't think they realize how destructive that is. And if you're trans, then I think you get it. You understand. And hopefully our allies will, say, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? And maybe be a little bit affirmative, affirm, I just want to let you know I'm just checking on you. I really appreciate you. I value you, and I support you, and we're going to tackle this together. being very supportive, I think can go a long way. We need to hear that right now, you know. And by no means, I made a video a week or two compared to the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, we're maybe, a couple of, maybe our fingernail compared to the marginalization and suffering that the Black Americans and African Americans have encountered in this country because of white guilt and systemic racism. That is huge marginalization. Ours is very teeny, teeny, tiny in comparison. But much like them and being marginalized, we are being marginalized. In the same way that we need to listen to them and say, how can I help you? Our allies need to say to us, how can we help you? So I'm going to end on that. And good night. Good luck to you. Bye bye.